We're live. It's the Thursday Bay Area Rich Lieberman Media Pulse. And boy, I'm glad you are with me today because something I wanted to talk about. I have been talking about this indirectly before I got sick. I made mention of it, well, more than a mention, but I'll get to what I'm talking about. So I've been saying all along that more than likely, this would be probably KNBR's last broadcast season with longtime partner, your San Francisco Giants. I didn't say it was a certainty. I said more than likely it would be sayonara. And that 46 years. So that's not something you just politely say bye-bye to and vice versa. But obviously there's extenuating factors. And I'm going to talk about all the news that you saw yesterday, which didn't mean and really didn't amount to anything new other than the fact that the Giants are committing themselves to the broadcasters that they've had for a while now. Mike Krukow, Dwayne Kuiper, Dave Fleming, and of course, John Miller. Conveniently, they didn't announce with this big brouhaha that SF Gate reacted as if they were coming out with a new Magna Carta. They didn't conveniently mention whom they are extending this extension with. In other words, where are the Giants going to be next year, 2026 and beyond? That was noticeably absent, but maybe underline, it was purposeful. Maybe they did it intentionally because no deal yet has been struck, although could have been struck and they're waiting to make an announcement. And the betting is on KNBR. Because when it comes to practical purposes, KNBR needs the Giants. And the Giants, more than ever, need KNBR, unless they do what a number of teams, not just in baseball, but other sports, are doing. They're setting up a .com. They're putting their own communications element on their own social sites, their own websites, and they're going it along. And they're doing away, or at least putting in the background, terrestrial radio. Across the bay when they were here, the Oakland A's at the time did that and did away basically with radio, though they did have a radio presence on AM 960, which was then Bloomberg, and they still do, but their main emphasis is through the internet. So here's the thing. This is very complicated, but bear with me. I said the Giants need KNBR. Well, if they regard terrestrial radio as still important or still decisive or meaning something, purposeful, speaking of that word, then they got to make a deal. If KNBR, which really, and I've been talking about this, and I can, explain it to you in real easy terms in this end, KNBR really does need the Giants, but they really don't. Because what do you think they've been talking about lately? And even earlier, they talk a lot of Warriors basketball. Of course, NFL football, the 49ers, the Warriors. What does that leave third or least talked about? Their own Major League Baseball team, the San Francisco Giants. And why? Well, you've been reading, baseball is still perceived as an old man's sport. The demographic is older, and that's just evident. And baseball, even though it's still vastly popular and has sort of a more regional popularity within markets, big in New York, big in Boston, both the New York teams, Chicago, Philadelphia, obviously LA. But outside of those cities, baseball and nationally is not as popular. So let's go back to the Giants situation. They need the KNBR needs the Giants. Well, of course they do. If they didn't have baseball, then they'd have to rely upon something like their own talk show hosts, the Uber drivers left, or whomever they employ, which doesn't draw any numbers. It doesn't. Look at the San Francisco radio ratings. It's been evident for years now. Cumulus is in a pickle. And the Giants, on the other hand, speaking of pickles, they still regard, I think, terrestrial radio / KNBR as vital to their PR objectives. And look, folks, they're trying everything off the field to get younger demographics into the ballpark. Look at the news the last few days. They hired this rapper. I've never heard of the guy. They've done in-house things. They got that deal where they sold 10% of the franchise to this startup to ostensibly put into the ballpark, they say, and to make the stadium look and smell a little nicer and all that stuff. But at the same time, the Giants, and this is perhaps kind of foolishly and being naive, Larry Baer still believes that his franchise is worthy of some compensation from KNBR. That's just not going to happen. It hasn't happened because of the nature of radio, terrestrial as it is today. The nature of radio rights are no longer on the domain at Cumulus with regards to the Giants. They don't have the money. I don't know how many times I have to keep saying that. If they somehow got some slush fund, what have you, in air quotes, enabled them to find money and pay for fake contract extensions and to satisfy the Giants non-monetarily, but promotion-wise, then they're going to make a deal. And I'm hearing it's back and forth. More than likely, what's going to transpire is this. They made the announcement on Wednesday about this new commitment to their mid-70s, older, sort of perhaps medical malady challenged broadcast crew. Still very popular, still very good. John Miller, better than most. One of the best, Hall of Fame announcer. Kruko Kuiper, Dave Fleming, all that. Okay, so they've made a commitment to them. But where? KNBR? I think, and I said this in my last broadcast on this subject matter. You'll have to look it up. But I said, I still believe, and I'm not alone, that they will announce separately from what they announced on Wednesday that they're going to extend with KNBR. There was a rumor that they were hitting the game, 95.7 the game. That can't happen because the game broadcasts Warriors, and there would be conflicts late in the season to which the game could not do the Giants because they have Warriors commitments, and the Warriors is their number one client. So that's not going to happen. It's, to me, what the Giants, the only leverage they have is they can tell KNBR and Cumulus, and even at that, if you don't have the money, you don't have the money to pay for the rights. They can tell Cumulus that we're seriously considering a internet connection via our website, via our social media sites, that kind of a thing. In which case, they can then do away with KNBR. I don't believe that is the case. I still think they make a deal because at the end of the day, I hate that phrase, but it's apt here. They both kind of need each other, and they both have leverage that is lessening. Even with baseball, being lame and old and mostly dominated by non-popular players, it's still Major League Baseball, even though it's becoming the third sport after basketball and football. That's just the plain facts. And of course, it helps if the Giants were to play better on the field. So that's to be determined. That you can't control. But they need baseball because then if they don't have baseball, then they have to do something different. Probably their own local schnoozers that they have right now. They're not very good. So I think they're going to make an announcement, and they usually do this right before the season starts. I've talked to a lot of people in the business locally. They still believe at the very last second they're going to make an announcement, probably could be before their game a week from today in Cincinnati. They open the season that they and KNBR are having another 3 or 4 year, what they call it, a 4-year deal with an option kind of a thing, right? Because that's just it. But they're both in precarious situations. KNBR is in a very precarious situation because, well, they're KNBR. Baseball as it is, look at all these, I've mentioned this before, all these regional sports networks in baseball going belly up. It's just, and even with all that, baseball still makes a lot of money with their internet, with their merchandising, with the local TV contracts and all. It's just more of a regional interest sport, not widespread domination, adulation like the NFL, which can do anything and it's gold. And the NBA is probably now the second sport, not baseball. Look at ESPN.com. Go up to the masthead where they list all the sports that they cover. Baseball's at the very, very end. I know the season hasn't started, but there's been trades. They have the unofficial opening where in Japan with the Dodgers and the Cubs. But it's just not a widely popular sport anymore. It may change, but that's been the case now for almost a decade. Football is king, basketball, the NBA, and then there's Major League Baseball. And that transforms to the local side. And we have the Giants situation with their radio situation. Kind of gone over this, and I hope you understand it a little bit better now, and you won't be surprised by any announcement, but that's my take. What else is going on? Again, folks, pardon the voice. It's getting a little bit better. I'm still a little weak, but I know your life depends upon my condition. I feel a little bit better, but not great. So I may or may not be back later today. Check my social sites on Twitter. I usually plug my appearance here on YouTube and to a lesser degree Facebook, which is, people notice Facebook is really not the big deal it is anymore, unless you want to look at pictures of your best friend's aunt's, spaghetti and meatball recipes or pictures of their casserole. It's just not there anymore. Okay, so enough on that. Have a great Thursday. Enjoy your day. Improving weather on the scene, and we'll see you later. Thanks for watching.